for Queen and Country. We have some creators here, so if you'd like to introduce yourselves and tell us your role in the film.
Hi, I'm Alejandro. I'm the director of the film.
I'm Paul Stone. I'm the writer of the original play and the screenwriter of the film.
My name's Neil Summerville and I played Dennis Rake.
So the concept of the film is really interesting. Where did that come from? How did you come about to create this?
Basically what it was, I was asked to take part in a Netflix show called Churchill's Secret Agents, where they put various people, well, basically it was an awful lot of ex-army people and me, through the Second World War spy training from the SOE, which is how I found out about Dennis. So they sort of juxtaposed my terrible time on the programme, going through all this hardcore army training, with Dennis's story. So that's when I first heard about it. Then after I'd completed the programme, just did absolute ton of research to find out not just about Dennis's story, but the story of Nancy as well, so the story of the LGBTQ community, but women and their contribution to the war effort. And we pulled together Dennis's story and then made it into a stage play, which also starred Neil Summerville, which we did really well with. Took it to the Edinburgh Festival, had it on at the Leicester Square Theatre in the West End, and then Alejandro saw the play and then got involved.
Oh wow, that's great. I mean, did you find anything that you wanted to add into the show or the film but you couldn't? Like any part of the story when researching?
Well, the thing is that the actual play is longer. The actual play is like an hour long, and when I approached Paul originally, the intention, and we actually shot the whole text, because being a monologue is really hard to gauge how long it's gonna be. But then we realized that it was like close to 50 minutes long, which is too long for a short, but too short for a feature. So I ended up having to. So there's like almost 15 minutes of footage that it's not in this version. But yeah, it just had to be done to have something that's manageable for as a film, as a short film.
And have you adapted stage shows to films previously?
No, never. I just went to see the play because my partner is good friends with Neil, and that's the reason we were there actually. And we had no idea. I had no idea what I was going to watch when I went to see the play, and I just loved the story immediately. And I just for some reason while I was watching Neil on stage, because on the play obviously there's no room for Neil to be like changing into all these different characters. So he just does the voices or stuff, but he doesn't actually change. But when I was watching the play, I could see him in all of these different characters. And so as I was watching the play, I came up with the idea of turning it into a film, and that's what I suggested to Paul.
And how was it, I guess, did you adapt the script a lot for the film?
A fair bit, but I mean that was sort of definitely in conjunction with Alejandro, because I had other filmmakers that came along and wanted to film the play. But once again, it would have almost been like National Theatre Live, where you were just watching a stage show that had been filmed. Whereas with Alejandro, he had a way of making it work, had a concept to make it work as a film rather than just a play, but also keep the theatricality of it, and obviously did a magnificent job with it. So.
And as an actor, have you starred in films previously, or are you mostly a stage actor?
I've done a bit of both. I've been in quite a lot of independent short films. And there was a low budget feature film that I did where I was playing somebody who's a post-apocalyptic world, a bit like The Walking Dead, and I was playing like a leader of a cannibal tribe, so completely different to this. And I did have the experience of doing 3 days work on the Kingsman Golden Circle film, working with Julianne Moore and Elton John and all of that. But I've also done fringe shows and all sorts. Yeah.
Do you have a preference on the kind of thing the way you perform?
No, because I like doing a stage show, you do it in real time, and the trick is to be able to repeat it every night and hit the right moments in reality every night. Whereas with a film, it's very much drawn back into honesty, and you have to be honest because the camera picks that up. So it kind of challenges you and stretches you, and that's what I like as an actor, to be challenged and stretched.
And how was it forming the same kind of the same character both on stage and on screen?
It's very interesting because on stage I have the audience and I can interact with the audience and get reactions and sometimes play off the reactions that I get. So there's that sort of piquancy of it being live. Whereas, with the film, obviously, the camera is the other person that I'm speaking to, or just off, So it was different doing it like that, and also because it's episodic on stage, and as Alejandro said, I do on the stage show. I arrive and I get changed, and I'm putting the makeup on as I'm telling the story as it is in the film. But for about the rest of the 2/3 of the rest of the play, I'm just in the full drag. So any other characterizations, I'm still in the drag. So it was really interesting having all the different costumes and being able to play the different characters in the film.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna add that it was amazing to work with Neil and to see him work, because we tried to shoot as much as possible in order, but obviously as everybody who has made a film knows, it's impossible to do everything in order, and especially because of the way we shot it. So sometimes I did have him jumping from one emotional bit, and then we were jumping to a completely different emotional bit, and he always was there. He always knew exactly where the emotion of the story of the character was, and that was just amazing. And for example, because also part of the shoot, it looks like it's just one location, but it's actually two locations. We shot in this cabaret bar, which is in a basement, and then we shot a lot of it in my 1-bedroom flat. It's just in a corner. We recreated a corner, and we just shot a lot of the inserts we did them there. And I remember there was a moment when I asked Neil if he wanted to have someone someone sitting, so he got someone to talk to, and he said, "I'm an actor. I have an imagination." I was like, fair enough. Yeah. And it was actually, it was just brilliant to see him work, because we were just there in a tiny corner in a 1-bedroom flat, all of us behind the camera, just see him do his thing. And for example, when we did the scene when Alex dies, that was just literally the one shot, because he just delivered it on the first one, and everybody behind camera, we were just all crying. So we're like, yeah, that's enough. We don't need another one. So
it's interesting because there's things like that where you do that scene where it is totally honest and on the emotion and what have you. And then there's another section on it. If you remember the sequence where he arrives with the suitcase that has the radio in it, and he's trying to bluff his way out. I actually recorded the audio in my bedsit on my sound recording equipment because it needed to be done. So it was an additional dialogue thing. So it's the different techniques that you have to use in order to create the whole film. Is fascinating.
I think we had to ADR that because we didn't realize my cat was doing some noise in the background, and we're like, we're gonna have to ADR that. I had to. Because you can hear Bailey doing something in the background. But that's the thing of shooting a flat.
I'm upset that Bailey didn't make an appearance.
No, he tried more than once. Yeah.
Did you, minus the cat, did you have a big crew?
No, it was very tight. It was Paul, our DOP, who's there. Hey, say hi, Paul. And then we had first AD, runner, Bria, who did an amazing job with all the costume, makeup, and set dressing. She did all herself. And Stanley, our producer, who was there helping us with everything, making sure everything was moving along, and I think that was it.
Bly?
And Bly doing sound, of
Yeah.
course. That's it, I think, yeah. It was a very tiny crew, yeah.
Was that intentional to keep?
Yes,
Sorry.
because the way, because I usually work as an AD on films, and so when I finally started like having some like regular work, I said like, okay, that's when I started like saving to make my own film, and the intention was to do a small short. But then when I came up with this, I had to figure out how to do the same amount of budget for a small short into a 40-something minute shoot, because it ended up being 5 days shoot, that 5 day shoot. So obviously we had to make it work, because you still had to feed people, we still had to rent all the costumes, get all the set dressing, because the cabaret bar where we shot doesn't look like that. We dressed it a lot, and we were dressing it every day, because in the evenings they were using it for something else, so we had to undress it every day, and then we had to recreate that in my flat. So yeah, it was intentional to be small, because we knew we had to be able to move quickly and to just keep it contained.
So compared to the 5 day shoot, how long was then post-production?
It ended up being several months, because this method of doing things, I don't know, it has worked for us twice already, with this short film and another one, which is basically I paid for the shoot out of my pocket, but then that was all the money went into the shoot. So we used the rough cut to get funding for post-production, for color grading, sound mix, music, all of that. And it worked well, but obviously ended up making the post-production several months, because I edited the film myself, so I had to do the rough cut without any color grading, without any sound mix or anything like that, and just do the best rough cut I could. And then thankfully Paul was really good at finding investors for us, just with that. And so we then had to do a crowdfunding campaign. But it was like, getting the funding, and now we had the funding, so we could do, as soon as we get any bit of money, we went straight into the film. So we got a little bit of money, it went straight into color grading. We got a little bit more money, it went straight into the sound mix or into the music. So it ended up being several months.
And with the music as well, because originally, in the original rough cut, in the original production, the music was a tape. It was somebody on piano. And in the original rough cut, I again had recorded the songs at home, and that was put together. And then later on, when we got the money, there was a little band put together, and we went into a studio and recorded the songs again. So there was this kind of constant brushing up of everything, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's quite a unique method, also like bold to just go for it and then figure it out. Yeah.
I mean, it works. Like I said, I think it works. I wouldn't do that for a feature, but it worked for short films. It worked twice for us already, because then after when we were still doing post on this, Stanley and I started working on a queer horror comedy short, and so we ended up doing the same thing. We just shot it with whatever money we had, and then used the rough cut to do a crowdfunding, to do the post-production. So it also been a very long post-production for a short, but it works because you get things done, because otherwise you end up just talking about it and waiting for the money to come out of somewhere, and it's harder to convince people to give you money when you have nothing to show for. When if you have the actual rough cut, you're showing them something, it's there, so you're literally saying, I just need money to finish it. So it kind of make it easier, slightly easier, right, Stan? Yeah.
And it's interesting that you say that then you were working on or are working on a queer horror short.
Yeah, no, we did that one is called Black Hole Barrier, and it's been doing actually, thankfully, really, really good also in some other festivals. It wasn't like the Soho Horror Film Festival and some other like LGBTQ festivals, and also horror film festivals. So.
Do you all actively try to create queer stories, or is this just something that ends up happening because the people you work with?
Well, I personally do. I think Paul as well, but I do because I am a gay man, so I am interested in seeing more of that on screen, and also a different kind of story. That's why I really like Dennis' story, because it's not the classic. It's not the classic, because I so tired of seeing the same always gay stories that always have a sad ending and always and always being depressing. And Dennis' story, yes, it has its sad moments, but he didn't have a sad ending. He lived out his life. He was recognized for the stuff that he did. he made friends. So it was a very fascinating story, and so that's why I fell in love with it. And for example, with the horror comedy, it's a horror comedy. Yeah, it's queer, but it's a horror comedy. It's not a drama. It's not something depressing. It's not, it's just to have fun, and it just happens to have gay characters in it.
I think for me, it is certainly very deliberate. I felt there was a gap in the market, as I've said to you, because I always say to everybody, for positive LGBTQ stories, particularly historical ones. And this is about the fourth or fifth story that I've told, whereby, because once again, we've seen those narratives where, we commit suicide or we die of whatever disease or whatever, and we're oppressed. And that history is really important to acknowledge. But what I've found is there are so many aspects of queer history where there are really great positive stories. And there seems to be, well, from my point of view, a massive gap in the market for that, which is where Dennis's story came from. A play I'm working on at the moment is, once again, another crazy story about a lesbian Sikh princess who was a goddaughter of Queen Victoria. There's another Second World War story coming out, which is going to be at the White Bear Theatre in June. Once again, it's a coming out story from the Second World War over in Burma, which also acknowledges the contribution of the army that came from the British Empire, not just, as my book says, straight white men all the time. So there's so many interesting historical stories out there for the queer community that we can celebrate. So I'm very, very passionate about bringing those to theatre and to film.
Yeah, absolutely, it's important to share queer joy as well as the stories that, yes, they are sad, but it's great to see that you're actively working towards the long lives lived, and it's not all just sad endings.
Yeah.
How about yourself?
Which is not a dig to the previous short film. It was great, but I just realized, as we were talking about it, I realized it wasn't a dig to that film.
Sorry?
So do you try to actively work in, I'd say, as an actor in queer roles, or is this something that happens?
I as an actor, I try to work on fascinating, challenging characters, whether that's Dennis Rake, or whether that's the cannibalistic, apocalyptic character, or whether it's a misogynistic, homophobic, racist police detective, or as long as the characters are challenging and interesting, then that's what I go for.
Do we have any audience questions? Yep.
Yay!
So, and this is a question for each one of you. If you could go back in time and ask Dennis a question, what question would you ask and why?
That's a really good question.
You Paul first.
I don't know. I wouldn't know where to start, to be honest with you. But I would love to pin the man down and interrogate him for hours, almost in a Nazi-like fashion. But no, obviously not like that. But there is so much that I would love to know about him. There's so much of his early life we don't know. He only ever provided very sketchy details of his childhood. And once again, I would love to know when he first realised that he was queer himself. How that impacted on his life, because I always find that fascinating when you have that one moment. For me, it was in church, and I remember seeing, which was mad, and I was 12, 13, and I saw Mrs. Patel's son came in, who was 16, I was like, wow, that is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my entire life, and I was like, oh my God, I'm queer, shit. But I would love to know that. So basically, Dennis's early life, and it's only very, very recently I've unearthed quite an extensive interview with Dennis from his later life, so there's so much we don't know about his final years, which I'm starting to tap into. But yeah, I mean, I would love to pin the guy down and talk to him for hours, frankly, about so much. Yeah.
I think I'd like to ask him what drove you to keep going back, because he was after he was almost executed and he escaped in the barrels of shit and all of that trauma and managed to get back. He was taken back to London, but he was determined to go back out because there was something else to be done, and it happened a few times, didn't it? During why? What was driving you to do that? You know, couldn't you have just sort of done, well, I've done my bit and I got injured, you know, and, why did you want to keep going back?
Yeah, that relates to probably what I would also not ask but talk with him about it, because to me he's one of the bravest characters I ever heard of, because he was openly gay in a time when he could have been shot for it. He was just openly gay about it. He was just open about it. He didn't care. There are interviews with Nancy that she said, yeah, he's queer, so he doesn't care. I don't care. And I'm like, how? I mean, look how, but it was like incredibly brave. And he just, and everything you read about him, like he just didn't care. And personally, I would like to know why, how, you know, especially back then.
Apparently, people like Nancy Wakey's commanders and that used to get frustrated because they were constantly getting complaints from farmers in France because Dennis wouldn't leave the farmers' sons alone. You know, he just didn't care, like you say. You know,
he just didn't care, and it was like just talk to him. Not just ask him, but talk to him about it. Like, you know, where does he find that amazing, that courage to just be himself, not give a complete fuck about it. You know, in that time back then, and I think that courage also relates to why he just kept on going back. Yes, because
risking death. He
for
literally
him
risking
it was like,
death.
This is my duty. I have to do. I can't help in this way. I'm gonna keep helping. And
Yeah.
you know, so it was. Yeah, I guess I kind of know answer. Hopefully.
Are there any more questions? Oh, yeah.
Hi, love the film,
Thank you.
obviously, as we all do. This question's for Neil specifically.
Yeah.
Obviously, this film itself, obviously, not your first foray into drag as a character and things like that as well, and being on the stage show and such. I was just wondering how you found both the process physically but also mentally. Do you feel it brought out certain things about yourself that you weren't aware of, or just kind of highlighted and made more clear certain things again about yourself and the character as well?
No, I kind of had that experience with a previous play that I did, which was at the White Bear Theatre many years ago. It was an Australian play called Cosy, and it starred Mark Little from Neighbours and Big Breakfast, and it was set in a kind of a mental home where the main character had decided that he wanted to put on a production of Così fan tutte, but none of the residents could sing or act, but they were putting it on, and this director was trying to direct it. And one of the characters that I played is written as a woman, but the director wanted me to play it as a post-op transsexual. So what I did was I would arrive half an hour early every rehearsal, and I would completely dress as a woman. Very interesting going into Primark the weekend before I started to get all the stuff. You know, I was telling the assistant, the girl there, I was saying, you know, I need tights, I need shoes and a skirt and everything, because I'm in this play where I'm having to play, you know, this character, and she was like, yeah, okay. So that was interesting, getting all of that stuff together. But I did that because I wanted to find out what happened. I found I moved differently. I found I sat differently. I found I got treated differently. And there was one rehearsal where I didn't have time to do all of this. So the first half of the day, I was just Neil, and it was weird. And the other actors found it weird. And then during the lunch break, I got dragged up. And when I came back out for the afternoon, it was like everyone went, oh, she's back. You know, so I kind of had that experience on that play rather than on this one. So yeah, I found a lot of my method training came into play, because certain parts of Dennis's life I haven't experienced, but I had to find something that I could relate to. So I think that was more what was going on in that production and that film.
I think in terms of drag, knowing quite a lot of drag queens myself and drag kings as well, it's an interesting thing. I think it does bring out a different side of people's personality. And I always say this is because I think it's like the person who your grandma thinks you are and the person your boss at work thinks you are and the person your best mate thinks you are. If they were to describe you, that would be three completely different people. And I think for drag queens and drag kings, certainly the ones I know, and I guess in Dennis's experiences as well, it's almost like there's another facet of your character, so it's still you, but it's just sort of like another little bit of you that you can then explore and comes out, which I think is always positive, because I think it gives you empathy for other people.
Has either of you experimented in the world of drag yourselves?
No. Yes, quite a lot, yeah. Basically, I was able to give up my day job because I wanted to do writing, and the way to facilitate that money-wise was to become a drag queen called Victoria Sponge. So I now work internationally doing it, which is great. And the best thing has been, funnily enough, has been actually for my writing, which is something I hadn't realised, because it does give you that empathy of playing that character, but also going out there and interacting with audiences. So as a writer, it's been wonderful for me, really. Yeah.
Do we have any more audience questions?
So,
Yeah.
yes. So, we've all heard of Alan Turing's story, and I've never heard of Dennis's story, so thank you for bringing that. I think it's absolutely incredible. We very rarely see positive stories, but a real life hero as well. I wondered, when making the play, making the film, did you get any resistance from people to want to tell your story?
Well, not resistance, but one thing we keep getting is a lot of people, even like it clearly says, well, it clearly shows that it's a true story. Where people who approach us and says like, wow, that's really cool. If only it had been a true story. It's like, it is a true story. What are you talking about? It's a true story. We keep, he keeps saying that in the play, and we keep saying it in the film. It's a true story, but still people who just don't believe it.
I think that, I mean, the main reason I think people like Dennis's stories aren't told, because as we say this all the time, we did it when we had the play, you look at somebody like Alan Turing, and if you're horribly homophobic, you can really still enjoy his story, because at the end of it, he gets his comeuppance, he's gay and that he's still got what was coming to him. Yeah. Whereas with Dennis, of course, that didn't happen. His story has this happy ending. So it does sort of make us wonder whether that's why we haven't heard Dennis's story before, and people like Dennis's story, because, he didn't have that terrible tragedy at the end of his life. He was honoured by the army, honoured by two governments.
An acceptable tragedy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's Alan Turing has that acceptable tragedy that makes it palatable for people who have a problem. Dennis's story doesn't. He lived happily well into his 70s, lived in France with all his cats. He had a great...
The tragedy that, for me, it's the first time I'm hearing about this.
Yeah.
It's just a shame that, we're not learning about this in schools or in the wider community.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's why I, like, immediately after watching the play, the next day I contact Neil and say, I want to make a film about it, because I just want as much people to know about Dennis as possible. And now we're actually, we're developing, we're in early stages, but we're developing a feature based on Dennis, because Alan Turing got one, which he deserves, but Dennis also deserves one. Everybody should know about his story. It should be a big, fun war movie with all of the drag and all of the music and all of that, and we're actively working on it, and this is the first step, hopefully.
Thank you.
Will the current visual version be available after its festival run for anyone to watch?
Yes, it's currently, thanks to the latest festival we were on, I was contacted by a distribution company, and they're in talks, so it might end up in I cannot say yet, but it's gonna end up in a channel. Yeah, just a channel. But it will be there. Yeah, it will be more widely available. The things I cannot say right now because it's all in the air at the moment. So, I don't want to spoil it. But yeah, it will be available in a known channel.
So other than working towards a feature for this, are you all working on anything at the moment?
Well, we are the horror comedy we did. The queer horror comedy. It's a proof of concept for a feature, and that one is also in develop. That one is actually more advanced because it's horror. Horror is easier to sell, I guess. So it's more advanced. In that one, it's moving along quite nicely. It's not going as quickly probably as I wish it was, but it's moving along really nicely. We have a fully developed script. We're in conversation with production companies, and looking at places where to shoot. So it's moving along there. So hopefully, maybe in a couple of years from now, there will be a Black Hole Barry, the queer horror comedy feature somewhere. Also maybe here. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. We'll wait for that.
Yeah.
I've got, I think, 3 productions. Well, one that's ready to go. Well, 3 productions basically on the go. Once again about queer history, positive queer history stories. Am I allowed to say my Instagram handle?
Yeah.
Is that okay? So if anybody wants to follow that or pop along to see any of the theatre shows, which once again is similar stories to Dennis's story, other really interesting queer history stories, hopefully. It's at Paul Stone Writer on Instagram, and you'll get all the information there to come and see the other shows if you want to. Thank you.
How about yourself?
In a couple of months, I will be doing a production. This will be the second time we've done it, where I'm playing an 87-year-old man in a care home who's nearing the end of his life, and it's a kind of he wishes he'd met his friends for the final time, and they turn up, or do they? And all this sort of thing, and then on next Tuesday, I'm acting in a web series, guest spot in a web series, playing a kind of right-wing, straight white male, right-wing Brexiteer, ruthless landlord who, in the evenings, likes to be an adult baby. So I'm going to end up in a nappy. I told you I like challenging. Yeah.
Not the baby thing. The show, the program,
Yeah.
the show.
So there's a couple of things, and I don't know what the future holds. But that's the life of an actor.
Yeah. I don't really know where to go from adult baby, but.
From a creative point of view, because that was my first film I've ever worked on and shot, because I did a lot of Channel 4 ITV stuff. So that was my first film I've ever worked on. I absolutely loved it, and I learned so much from a creative point of view. So I was just wondering, have the 3 of you learned anything in the time that we did this, in the time that you did it? Have you learned anything creative about yourself from making this film?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I realized that because of the technical way this one had to be shot, it was a very technical shoot. But I ended up really enjoying the process of planning the shoot, and since then I always do that. I plan a shoot to the extreme, like a battle. I don't arrive to say. Well, you saw it when we did the horror one later, because I don't arrive to say it going like, let's figure it out. No, I already figured it out, because it just allows, in a strange way, it allows you to be more creative, because it forces you to see the film in your mind, to edit the film in your mind before you're even there. So you're focusing on getting the film that you have in your mind real, instead of trying to make it up in the spot. Which it was, in the case of this shoot was a necessity more than anything else, because it was just one character, and it involved all the costume changes, and involved 2 locations playing as one, so it was a necessity. But for the following shot that we did, it wasn't a necessity. It was because I wanted to do it, because I really enjoyed doing it, and because that's the way I think a film should be made. You're supposed to see it, and which is what I mean. In a way, it came naturally, because, for example, when I was watching the play for the first time, I remember somehow I could see, it wasn't there, but in the play I could see the toilet. When he's doing the toilet thing, I could see it. I wasn't there, but in my mind it was there. I could see it, and I was completely disgusted by it. So it was just came naturally, that this exercise of just like pre-visualizing the whole process.
I think for me, the main thing was really the difference between a theatre script and a screenplay. So it's my first film that I've ever adapted, obviously with a lot of help from Alejandro, a theatre script into a screenplay. So that's been a big learning curve, but really fascinating and interesting for me. Yeah, and helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you almost have answered it. It's the thing about you when you do this show, you start and then like an hour later it's over and you've gone through the whole thing in episode, and it's holding all that together when you're doing it in bits and pieces. And when I'm like recording additional dialogue at home to what's already been filmed and keeping it fresh and keeping it, so I think that's some sort of technical stuff like that. It was interesting.
Thank you all so much for submitting your film and for coming along today and supporting. And please continue to create queer stories, whether they're horror, whether they're joyful, whether they're absolutely bizarre, or whatever. Thank you very much. Can we get a round of applause, please?